Hello everyone. This is the CircuitPython Weekly for July 27th, 2020. It's the time of week where we get together to talk about all things CircuitPython. I'm Jeff Epler, and I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python designed to run on tiny computers called microcontrollers. Development of CircuitPython is primarily sponsored by Adafruit, so support them by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. This meeting is hosted on the Adafruit Discord server. You can join anytime by going to adafru.it/discord. We hold the meeting in the CircuitPython text channel and the CircuitPython voice channel. This meeting typically happens Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, but the date occasionally varies for U.S. holidays. We have an online calendar. If you'd like to be notified about the meetings via Discord, let us know, and we will add you to the CircuitPythonistas role. The length of the meeting varies, but it's often from 60 to 90 minutes long. This meeting is recorded, both the text on the CircuitPython text channel and the audio on the CircuitPython audio channel, and it will be posted to YouTube and released on various podcast services. If you find we're not available on your favorite podcast service, let us know. This meeting is accompanied by a notes document. If you wish to participate but don't have a mic, or just prefer not to have your voice recorded for any reason, you can add your updates to the notes doc and we'll read them off. If you can't attend at all, you can still leave your notes in advance, and likewise we'll read them for you. The document is updated with time codes, if I remember, so that if you want to watch or listen to just part of the meeting after the fact, you can skip to what you're interested in. If you're listening in, please let us know that you're lurking, so we can skip over you during the round-robin portions of this meeting. If possible, please put it in the notes document. If not, let us know by saying just listening or lurking in the text channel. This meeting is held in 5 parts. First, community news with links to CircuitPython projects and a preview of the Python on Hardware newsletter. Second, the state of CircuitPython libraries and Blinka. We'll look at numbers that summarize the health of the project and get a high-level summary of recent development and future direction. Third, and the first of 2 round-robin sections, is Hug Reports. In Hug Reports, we invite you to highlight positive contributions from the awesome folks around us. In the round-robin sections, we'll start with the moderator and continue in alphabetical fashion until everyone has had a chance to speak. If you're lurking, we'll skip over you. If you have notes, the moderator will read them aloud. Fourth, status updates. During status updates, we invite community members to take a few minutes to talk about their CircuitPython-related work, progress, and plans. Feel free to chime in with quick tips or advice as appropriate. Quick questions and answers are perfect for this section, but longer discussions should be taken to our last section, In the Weeds. For topics that are more open-ended, this is the section where we can discuss them. If you have something else you'd like to discuss, please add it to the end of the In the Weeds section of the notes document as soon as you think of it, and tag it with your name so we'll know who's leading the discussion. We'll cover topics in the weeds in the order they were added to the document. With that, I will take a time code and we'll continue to community news. There was a ton of stuff in the newsletter draft, and I just picked a few top items. So top of the top is Python leads the IEEE top programming languages for 2020. It's been a turbulent year since the last time IEEE Spectrum broke out the digital measuring tools to probe the relative popularity of programming languages. Yet one thing remains constant: the dominance of Python. As far as projects go, I learned about Alice Robot, a Kinect-controlled FPV mini-mech powered by CircuitPython on an Ada Feather microcontroller. The skeleton is 3D printed on an MP Delta mini printer. And I hope somebody will grab these links and start putting them in the text chat, because that is an awesome way for everybody to see the stuff we're talking about. Thank you, Anonymous Dingo. CircuitPython Day is 9/9/2020. Adafruit has chosen September 9 as the snakiest day of the year for CircuitPython Day. Much more to come on events and happenings, to include a CircuitPython team live stream, collaboration with hardware and software folks, and highlighting all things Python and Python on hardware. Do you have ideas? Send them via email to circuitpythonday@adafruit.com. Adafruit update. Adafruit is shipping orders. Production is up, and now is the best time to get the Adafruit you've been waiting for. More projects. We've got a workshop clock, which I believe is from our very own Cedar Grove. A workshop clock with pandemic-inspired What Is Today display is ready for debut. No internet required and ready for the zombie apocalypse. Inspired by John Park's Metro Minimalist Clock Project. programmed in CircuitPython. And then we have more time, a productivity timer, another Pomodoro-like device with Adafruit Feather components from Blaine on Twitter. First time using CircuitPython, and it's awesome. I'm not sure if that went with that item or with a different item. But anyway, moving on, we've got UF2 and CircuitPython on Serpano, which is a cute little board that plugs right into your breadboard and looks like it's just ready to go. So this Twitter post covers assembly and bring up, and there is also a YouTube. Near and dear to my heart, PyOhio 2020, where I met Kattni and various other CircuitPython peeps in 2019, did it virtually online today, and all of their videos are available in one playlist. So I invite you to check those out. And now we are ready for the state of CircuitPython, libraries, and Blinka after I take another time code. So I guess I will tackle the overall section because I did not negotiate with Scott that he would do it. So overall, hi Jerry. Overall, we just released 6.0 Alpha 2, and we are getting some awesome feedback from the community. And in our internal meeting, Scott discussed that he would like to address some of those items and release the next alpha soon, hopefully this week. And I can't really speak to the library side of things because I haven't been keeping an eye on it. But yeah, and we're just also starting this ramp up to CircuitPython Day. So we really welcome if you have any ideas or suggestions on what we should be doing. So, Scott is back and just in time to tell us what is going on with the core. Oh, I have more to do. Thank you. Whoever was typing into the document for me. So we have the numbers and the stats because part of the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka is getting a numbers-based overview of the health of the project. So last week we had 23 pull requests merged with 14 authors, including some that I'm less familiar with, Birdie B and 2BNDY5 I think we've had before, but I don't see the names regularly. Let's see, GPHI I think is new, and I don't recognize Phil Schenk. We also have 10 reviewers to thank: Maker Melissa, Jepler, Tanut, Brent, Hierophect, D. Harada, Sedacious, Lady Ada, GF Barros, who is a name I'm not familiar with, and D. Halbert. As far as issues go, we are up by a few. We had 13 closed issues by 9 people and 19 opened, also by 9 people. So things are going up a little bit there. And now I will actually turn it over to Scott to tell us about the core.
Hello. Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, Scott.
Hello. So for the core, we had 10 pull requests merged from 6 different authors. Birdie B, Dave Putz are relatively new. Zobs and Warrior Wire are also relatively new or infrequent contributors. So thank you to those folks. On the reviewer side, we had 5 reviewers. So thank you to all our reviewers. And again, as always, we are always looking for reviewers. So if you want to help out with that, please let us know. We have 14 open pull requests, where the oldest 2 are 71 days and 60 days. But I believe at least some of those are draft. So we don't have to worry too much about them. And then we have a number that are 4 days or older or less, which is great. Issues-wise, we had 1 closed issue by 1 person and 8 opened by 4 people. So we're definitely net down for a total of 315 open issues that you can check at github.com/adafruit/circuitpython/issues. Breakdown-wise, we use milestones to kind of gauge how urgent and when we're going to do those. So we have 6 issues not assigned to milestone, which means we need to triage them. And then we've got 7 open issues for 6.0.0, which is the most immediate release that we're doing and the things that we should look at the most. So that's where we are with issues, and I'll hand it back over to you, Jeff.
Well, actually, Scott, I just want to hear one more thing from you, and that is you were telling us something about the download stats in the other meeting.
Yeah. So we had an internal meeting earlier, and for those of you who don't realize this, the circuitpython.org/downloads page is organized by download count of the last 2 releases, which is like the latest stable release and the latest unstable release, or the previous unstable release. And the reason that we do that is to gauge like how popular boards are. And I pulled the numbers for the 6.0 Alpha 2 release last week, and 2 of Seed Studios boards ended up in the top 8, which is really cool. So if you go to the page, Seeduino Wheel Terminal is number 3, and the Seeduino Xiao is number 6. So it's really cool to see some non-Adafruit boards hitting the tops of the page. And we're happy to see that Seed's embracing CircuitPython. So keep it up. And this is the reason that I'm so kind of pedantic about having download stats be what orders this page by default, because I want everybody to have a chance to make it to those top spots.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. And
Yep,
with that,
no problem.
I'll pass it over to Kattni to tell us about the libraries.
Thanks, Jeff. So this is the information for all of the Adafruit CircuitPython libraries. We had 13 pull requests merged by 8 authors, including Phil Schenk, who I've not heard of. GPHI, I haven't heard of. KMatch 98 is relatively new, I believe, and 2BNDY5 is new-ish. And we had 8 reviewers, including GF Barros, who I've not heard of. So thank you to all of our reviewers and our new reviewer and authors. In terms of pull requests merged, 13 was the number. Some of the older ones were 49 and 45 days old, which is excellent. And quite a few were less than a week, leaving us with 38 open pull requests, the oldest of which is still slowly being worked on by the original author, so we have left it open. Still worth doing a sweep sometime soon to make sure that we are keeping track of what's going on with our PRs. We had 11 closed issues by 7 people and 11 open by 8 people, leaving us net neutral at 172 open issues, and 9 of those are listed as good first issues. If you're interested in contributing to CircuitPython, the libraries are a great place to start. You can check out circuitpython.org/contributing, and you'll find a list of open PRs, open issues, and library infrastructure issues related to the libraries. And the issues you can sort by label, including good first issues. So if you're new to contributing overall, good first issues are a place to start. If you're not, check out bugs or enhancements. If you want something a little more in-depth or complicated. There is a guide available on contributing to CircuitPython using Git and GitHub, which was recently updated and is still in the process of being updated. And if you have any questions beyond that, we're always available to help. We want to make sure that you are able to contribute in a way that works for you. And we would love to help you out with that. So you can check us out on Discord or reply to a GitHub issue and tag one of us, and we will see that as well, and we can help you there. We had a number of updated libraries in the last 7 days, but no new libraries. So thank you to everybody that's been working on this stuff and providing updates. And that's where we are with the libraries.
Thank you, Kattni. Next, I'm going to hand things over to Maker Melissa to tell us about Blinka.
Hello.
Hi.
So Blinka is our CircuitPython library compatibility layer for Raspberry Pi and other single board computers. This week we did not have any pull requests merged. There are 3 open pull requests at the moment, and there was 1 closed issue by 1 person and 0 open by 0 people, leaving a net of 23 open issues. There have been 1,503 Pi PI downloads in the last week, and we are currently supporting 52 boards. And that's it.
Thank you, Melissa. With that, we are going to move into the first, as soon as I take a time code, round robin section of Hug Reports. So just a reminder, we'll start with me. I will kind of demonstrate how it is done. Then we'll continue alphabetically down through the end of the list, loop back to the top, until everybody has had a chance to either speak or have their notes written, or their notes read aloud. So I'm going to go first, and Jerry is up next. So I have a group hug and a hug to Kattni for continuing to help me run this meeting. And she probably has to tell me to add a time code here. And I know there are people I'm forgetting because my brain is a little fried this morning. And one that I'm just remembering is thanks for Higher Effect. We had some reviews from him to me and from me to him. And it was pleasant to work together, and we made all the code better along the way. So that was a lot of fun. Kattni is on deck, but I will hand the baton to Jaron.
Hello, good afternoon, or afternoon here anyway.
Yep.
Let's see, thank you and to Carter, Foamy Guy, Anecdata, Kattni, and probably others that I've forgotten who were involved in a rather marathon and challenging team effort on Discord, working through what was a very perplexing issue. It was interesting to be part of, but thanks to everybody who persisted. And Jeff, thanks for getting STIO working on the STM32F405. Nice job.
Yeah, you're welcome, of course. KMatch98 will be up next, but now we are going to Kattni.
So my first tech report is to Foamy Guy for putting in a ton of effort into helping a user in the Help with CircuitPython channel with a difficult issue. This is the same issue that Jerry was referring to. And subsequently, my next hug report is to Jerry and Carter for stepping in and helping the same user with what was apparently an impossible issue. So much patience and effort was put into this. We did figure it out. It was a corrupted MPY file, is our best guess. That was giving keyword argument errors. It was really weird. Took like 24 hours of near constant help. And so thank you to everybody who was involved in that. To Alvaro for continuing to translate new guides and for adding a new page to a guide that we updated in English. And finally, hug report to our community moderators on Discord for keeping up with the influx of spam and terribleness that's been happening. Remember that it only represents a small part of the community, and we are creating an important, inclusive, and welcoming place for the majority of the community. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Kattni. That is really important to emphasize. So thank you very much for that. Maker Melissa is on deck, but it's KMatch98. How are you? And unfortunately, I can't hear you. I'm going to go ahead and read their notes, and then if you want to try again when we get to status updates, I would be happy to do that. So KMatch98 writes, hug report to Foamy Guy and Tanut for label fixes, and both of your patience with me as I learn. Thanks for the positive attitude. Thanks, Foamy Guy, for an adaptive display identifier for built-in versus external display and the Clue Sparkline Accelerator demo. And hug report to Dan H. for the Learn Guide on building CircuitPython. Mr. Certainly's notes are up soon, but now Maker Melissa.
Hello.
Hi.
So, I just wanted to give a hug report to Kattni for helping confirm I was doing something right with regards to submitting a new library, and group hug to everyone.
Ooh, new libraries. All right, next I have notes from Mr. Certainly, and looks like we've got a couple more lurking and text only. So Scott is the next person besides me who will be talking. So Mr. Certainly, who is text only, writes, thanks to all the community moderators for their help with the recent uptick of Discord incidents. And thanks to all the community members who reach out to us reporting issues that need moderation. You all make this place awesome, and we appreciate your help. Summersoft, I see you're lurking. Hi, Summersoft. Stargirl is text only today. 1902 is the time code. Stargirl sends a hug to community moderators. We've had a lot to deal with this week. And with that, it is time for Scott.
Hello.
Hi.
First a hug report to Warrior of Wire for pushing async forwards. It's really cool to see that happening. Thank you to, I think Syscorn is what it is, not Circorn. I must have typoed it. For improving type hints, which has been really great. Thank you to... All right,
Thank you,
we'll
whoever fixed that.
It wasn't me. Did they just drop, or do we need to ban them?
I don't know. Thank you, Kattni.
Okay, perfect. I feel like I should skip ahead. thank you to all of our Discord mods for keeping Discord, reactive to stupid people. So I just wanted to emphasize also that for moderators, if you are getting burned out, please take a break. And if you're worried about particular times, reach out to me and I'll make sure that I'm online to cover those times. We are talking with Phil, and Phil's going to email somebody at Discord. So we're working on it. We know it's a problem, and we know that one option is getting out of the directory. But we think it's a bigger problem that Discord needs to work on. So we want to have that conversation with them.
Hi, motherfuckers.
Great.
God damn it.
Scott,
All right, hold on.
language.
Sorry.
We're
ban
just
me
getting
too.
invaded now? Jeez.
Okay, I'll look at locking down the channel in just a second. Let me finish. Hold on. Somebody else just joined. Okay, come back to me. I'm gonna lock this down.
All right. Well, with that, I will hand it to Zoltan V923Z, who I guess I missed saying you were on deck. So if you're not ready, that's on me.
No, that's fine. Thanks,
Hi.
Jeff. So first of all, I have a group hug. I have been skipping a couple of meetings in the past several weeks, but it's always great to be back. And second, I would like to thank you, Jeff, for helping me out with documentation issues and just being always a good sport. Thanks a lot.
All right. So heading up to the top of the alphabet, we have got a couple of people whose notes I will read. Next up, besides me, is Dan. And I have not been taking time codes. I'm in such trouble. So Anecdata, who is lurking, has a hug report for Scott for the deep dives. It's very educational to get a peek behind the curtains and see how all the pieces of this big endeavor stack up and work together. So Dan, we are ready for you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff, and also Phil Schenk for fixing up some things that happened after we took out the stop equals keyword in I2C. There were some libraries that depended on that, and we fixed them. And then someone who uses, Phil Schenk uses 3.5, maybe on an old RPi, or I'm not sure, had an issue. There's a very strange syntax problem with trailing commas and argument lists in 3.5 and earlier. So that's all fixed up, and that got into the bundle last night, so that's good. As Scott mentioned, thanks to Warrior Wire, who's working on async and await, and he's proposing some a simple event loop library that he already uses internally for a 3D printer, and hopefully he can break that out and let us try it out. Also, he also looked at speeding up our GitHub action builds, trying to run things on multiple cores. So that's still a work in progress right now. Thanks to Dave Putz, who said, how come we always compile things -OS instead of -02, which is a higher optimization level? There's room on some boards, on some chips to do more optimization, which results in larger code, but speedier code. And it's a noticeable improvement, like maybe 20% or so in some cases. So thank you to Dave for working on that. Thanks to Scott for working on the changes that would be necessary when we move up to GCC 10. He's using Arch Linux, which has GCC 10 available already. And so there were some minor changes that need to be made for that. Thanks to Katney, who I had a discussion with about fixing up some Learn Guide examples involving using board.i2c instead of bus.io.i2c. So we made some changes in the library and, in the Learn Guide, and also in some examples for a particular Learn Guide. And there's more to do in that regard also. And as everybody's already mentioned, thanks to the entire moderation team for dealing with the uptick in bad actors on Discord. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dan. I wonder whether you might summarize the use of board.i2c down in the weeds, because I've been interested in the answer to that and I missed out on the discussion. Foamy Guy is up soon, but now I have notes for David Gloud, who writes, thank you to Dan H. for quick help on Pylint plus Black install, and Katney for the Learn Guide. Scott, Maker Melissa, and Deshipu for enlightenment on what is and is not Blinka, and portability between Pi and Feather when I wanted to use Gamepad on the Pi. We have a number of lurkers. We are going to put Hierophect up on deck. But now it's Foamy Guy. Hi, Foamy Guy. You have some background noise.
Hello. Sorry about that. I will try my best here. For this week, I have a hug report for KMatch98 for creating the Sparkline module within the display shapes library and getting that fixed up, all the requested changes so that could get merged in this week. Hug report for the folks over at KittenBot. I got a hold of one of their IO-bit devices today. I think it was originally created for the microbit, but it happens to be a really nice addition to the Clue. Gives ability to do lots of fun stuff with that board. As mentioned earlier, to Carter, Anecdata, Katney, and Jerry, and of course anyone else, if I've forgotten some, that helped out with the case of the mysterious Neopixel error that came up in the Discord. To John Park for his excellent guide on the PyPortal countdown that made it really easy to set up a countdown for CircuitPython Day. And then to Flame Eyes for their work to add support to an older but a little bit cheaper IO expander circuit to one of the libraries. And then lastly, a group hug to everybody. That's it for me this week. Thanks.
Thank you. Hierophect, why don't you finish up hug reports for us?
All right. Well, first off, thanks to you, Jeff, for your reviews this week and for all of your hard work on SDIO. I appreciate you putting that PR in because it's actually going to help out on a bunch of my personal projects, being able to use that SD card at a higher speed. So thank you for that. Just a thanks to Tanit for his reviews on the new ESP32 stuff. And that's it for me.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on to status updates. If you were with us for hug reports, then you kind of know the lay of the land here. We're going to go in a round-robin fashion, and I am going to start.
Wait. Can I finish? Or
Oh,
I
I'm
could
sorry.
just do it later, too.
Yeah, sorry. We're going to circle back around to Scott, who gets try number 2 at his hug reports.
It does actually look like we may have successfully blocked more people dropping in, which is good. So yeah, if you want to speak and participate, CircuitPythonistas, you will have to do that to be in this channel, which I just set up, and it looks like it's working, which is good. So thanks again to all of our mods. Thank you to Katney in particular for making a community helpers private channel. For those of you who don't know, we have a private channel for mods, and now we also have one for community helpers, just so those folks can coordinate privately. If you want to be a community helper or a community moderator, please reach out to us, and we'll consider the help. We certainly can need it at this point as well. And if you don't want to do that, always feel free to @community moderators, and we'll hop on and take care of whatever the issue is. We appreciate that help as well. In particular, IoT Panic and XXCoder have been pinging us a number of times, which has been really helpful. So thanks to them. And then lastly, a hug report to Sedacious for shutting down an unproductive GitHub issue conversation that was happening as well. We do moderate GitHub as well, so beware of that. And that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Scott. Sorry I was leaving you out in the cold.
No, it's all good. I almost forgot myself. I'm glad we're dealing with it.
Yeah. Thanks for responding quickly, you and Katney and everybody else, to this stuff, because it's not great. Anyway, So in status updates, we want to hear what you have been up to in the past week or so, what you hope to get up to in the next week, and just whatever is bringing you a little joy in the world, because sometimes that is a little bit lacking. So I will start this round robin. Jerry will be up second, and we will just go around, and unless I miss somebody, and if I do, please speak up, we will hear from everybody. And the document just moved. There we go. So last week I finished, or rather I worked on the SD card guide mostly we're doing a big update, actually a new guide on the Learn system about SD cards. It's going to cover the Adafruit SD card library for those boards that still need to use it. It's going to cover the new SD card I/O for SPI SD cards and the new SDIO I/O for SDIO SD cards. So this week, my primary goal is to finish that SD card guide, and then as time permits, I'm going to start support on Sharp Memory Display, which is a black and white LCD display that apparently has some interesting properties and challenges for adding to CircuitPython. So I'm going to hand it to Jerry, but Kattni is up after that.
Okay, thanks. I spent a bunch of time testing the 6.0 Alpha 2. Just my usual fun thing of just keeping up and putting on a bunch of different boards. And I got caught up by there was a significant problem with I2C, I2C, but that's now been resolved, and then nice to see that working great. So, and then ran into a problem with the PyStack being exhausted. And it turns out, I guess was a known issue, but so just for your information, I tried just doubling it, and that fixed it for me. So I don't know if you want a PR for that simple fix, or if that needs more discussion and thought. Just let me know if there was a trivial change to just double the size of it. But at least that got my my system back up and running that I was trying to get going.
I think we'll want to include making the default C stack size smaller as well.
Okay.
Because on the SAMD21, what will end up happening is we'll cut those kilobytes off the heap, which we probably don't want to do.
Okay. Do you want me to look at that, or do you want to wait and let somebody else who's more involved in the core take care of that?
If you want to look into it, that would be awesome.
Okay, so just bump one up by a K and the other one down by a K.
Yeah, and I think that would be fine, because basically PyStack allocates function call structures for calling Python functions. It used to be a mix of the C stack and if it was large on the heap. So by doing it on the PyStack, it's in one particular location now. Okay.
And I noticed it. I mean, it's something it's global. I mean, it's for all systems. It's not by type or by board or anything like that. So, right. Is that the way it'll stay?
I wouldn't expect it to. I would expect it to evolve, but this is just.
But for now, I'll take a shot at least seeing if I can figure out how to reduce the other stack, and then I'll stick a PR and then you can comment on that.
And test it with the CPX library, because that's the thing that ran out of regular stack beforehand.
Okay, I can do that.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yep.
And thanks, Dan. That was just the issue that I wanted to bring up. So anyway, I will pass things over to Kattni, and then up next is KMatch98 with a second try at the mic.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, sorry, I was expecting something to light up that didn't, so I was not sure that you could hear me.
Oh, I do hear you.
Excellent. So last week, helped with further translations of guides by Alvaro, blogged the published PMSA 300i guide, which is air quality sensor, but it's unusual in that it's I2C, and it has stemma connectors on it, so it's super easy to get started with, and we already have a library and code for it. So that guide's been published, so if you bought one of those, you can get started pretty easily. Created 9 fritzing objects, updated the VL53 L0X guide with the stemma Qt version. We are stemifying a lot of things, and so the guides need to be updated while still including information for the original versions, because obviously a lot of people have the original versions of these boards. So the ones that we update, the guides have to be updated in a particular way. I updated the localization section on CircuitPython.org. It was a little unclear what exactly one would be localizing, just based on the context of contributing. CircuitPython.org/contributing was very much touted to be library related. So I added some tweaks to the copy and moved some stuff around. so that it's clearer that you are translating CircuitPython itself, not one of the libraries. And I updated or uploaded board files for 2 new boards to GitHub. So I think one of them is in the shop already and one of them is on the way to the shop. This week, more fritzing objects. The 2.7-inch sharp memory display had an issue with Eagle that I'm waiting on a fix for. So until that's fixed, I can't actually do that one. And the Grand Central M4, which was recently added as a to-do. Update the product copy on the uploaded board file repos. When we upload board files, we include product copy, and as those boards were not in the shop yet, I had no product copy to add, so I need to go back and do that. We have a GitHub repo for the default files that ship on CircuitPython boards. And the M0s have been updated to, I'm assuming, CircuitPython 5x. So we have new default files for those, so I need to upload those. And then also link the default files from the Metro M4 Express Airlift into the guide, and then reply to a forum post where the person was requesting them. I'm going to be updating the BME 680 guide with the STEMMA QT version. Same set of updates as was done to the other one. I was waiting on images, but they only fabbed the board, I think, today. So the images will be available today, and then I can get to that. And then continuing the update on the Git and GitHub guide eventually. There's just more priority stuff that's popped in. It's the thing that needs to be updated is the pull request page, and it's going to be kind of involved because it covered Travis and how to deal with pilot errors and that sort of thing, and we don't use Travis anymore. So a good half of that page is not just out of date, it's irrelevant. And people need to know how to handle pilot errors using GitHub Actions, and also how to deal with Black. So I'm going to actually have to make a PR, which I will choose someone who gets to be my reviewer and basically tell you what to write, because it'll be like a dumb error of some kind, simple one rather, and it needs to be reviewed because it covers the review process as well. So that's going to be a bit of work, and I need to make sure that I've got cycles from somebody else to help out. And other than that, I don't think anything else was added to my list that is not included, other than the discussion about what we're doing in terms of helping out moderators on Discord and what we're going to be doing with regards to that. Mark says, Travis and Git Actions was confusing as someone new. I was able to see and work around it, but as someone still new, if you want someone to test the updated instructions, let me know. I will definitely do that. The page will be live as I'm editing it, which isn't great. But we can't really delete guide pages because they're linked into other things. So you'll be able to see it as I go. And that would be fantastic. So I will definitely take you up on that. And that's what I got going on.
All right. Thanks, Katney. So up soon is Maker Melissa, but now KMatch 98. You want to take another try with your mic?
Hey, Jeff, this is Kevin. Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes, it's working great.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. Okay. So last week, worked on implementing the Sparkline, which is basically a horizontal scrolling display. That got merged, but in the meantime, I sent Foamy Guy on a wild goose chase, but resolved some errors in my code. So thanks, Foamy Guy, for that. And I'll take it as a positive. He found some other bugs in the process, so I'll call that a success. Other things I forgot to mention here in the notes, but working on how to document some of the additions that Foamy Guy and I have made to label. So we're working on a strategy around that. And last was that I built CircuitPython.
Yay.
So that leads us into the next thing. So, and that was thanks to Dan H for the guide on that. This week, so now that I can at least build CircuitPython, I'll try a beginning problem, which is fixing a bug in a group insert, which we ran across in the label fixes. So we'll see if I can resolve that one. And the last side note is I've got about 50 pounds of reclaim stepper motors and trying to figure out ways to hook stuff to them. So I got 2 ways down, and who knows how many more we can come up with to make something move. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to go to Maker Melissa, and then I've got some text-only people. So go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, there. Found the mute button. Let's see. This last week, I worked on the Matrix Proto Library and developed a couple examples on there. And that's really a library to kind of give some of the ease that the PyPortal library has to a Metro M4 Airlift Light and the RGB Matrix Shield and RGB Matrix combination. So you can do stuff off the internet easily. I figured out how to detect if YouTube is live streaming for another example, and I updated the CircuitPython.org website to add a message to Chrome users warning about Chrome blocking UF2 files by default. This week I'm going to work on finishing up various assigned GitHub issues and pull requests.
Thank you. Scott is up soon, but now I have notes from Stargirl, who is text only. Working on hardware designs for my next Eurorack module, she writes, packing, and getting rid of stuff. Movers come next Monday. All right, and with that, we will go to Scott.
Hello. So last week, I had a number of pending PRs from the previous Friday that I got all merged in. And then I released 6.0 Alpha 2 on Thursday, which was it had lots of stuff in it, including the speed up from you, Jeff, and the PyStack switch. So please give that a try. We're basically waiting for the new microlab before we do beta, but that's all good. And I will plan on doing a new release this week as well, because it's clear that the PyStack size is too small for large projects. So we'll poke at that and get that released pretty quick. On Friday, I tested the hardware pinouts with my adapter board for the ESP32S2. So hopefully that'll, later this week, I'll have a conversation with Lamore about getting some designs for Adafruit S2 boards, which will be cool. And then my focus this week on the software side is adding the native Wi-Fi APIs with the S2 implementation for that. And then in my fun time, I've been really curious about the Orange Crab FPGA board because it's a feather format. And so I've been starting to look at system on a chip design with, hoping to make a system on chip that is CircuitPython friendly and powerful. So that'll be really interesting. And I found this book from Joseph Hughes, who's kind of like a prolific ARM writer. He works at ARM and works on Cortex-M, so he has all the reference books for the different Cortex-M cores. And there's an interesting book I found on ARM.com that is all about system on a chip design with Cortex-M, which I just started reading it, but I'm imagining it's going to be very, very helpful for a lot of the work we do in CircuitPython, because so many of the chips that we support are system on chips for Cortex-M boards. So I'm really very excited about that. I think it covers different memory buses and things. So there's a link there, and I think somebody's going to copy it over. It looks really interesting, and I think people should take a look. It's just a PDF that's freely available. And I did the Kindle PDF to Kindle thing. So it looks pretty neat. So I'd recommend anybody who's interested in chip design to take a look at that.
Sounds cool. V923Z is next, and then we wrap around to Dan at the top of the alphabet.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So last week I added 3 functions to Microlab. Actually, all 3 of them were suggested by a GitHub user named Roberto Colesteta. One of them was implemented by him too. First, I wasn't quite enthusiastic about these suggestions because I thought that they wouldn't bring in new functionality, so all these could be done with the old version of Microlab. But then I whipped up an implementation anyway, and then he came back with some benchmarks which were really convincing. So then we decided to let it run and include these three functions: the norm and the trapezoidal rule for numerical integration and range. I would also like to mention here that he's very keen on bringing Microlab to ESP8266. I know that Adafruit has dropped support for that for a reason, but if you need it, then you could head over to his GitHub or the GitLab page. Actually, he has some 20 odd firmware for some 20 odd variants of ESP8266 PyBoard and whatnot. I have lost count, sorry. Then I took a stab at integrating the documentation into the source code itself, as we discussed it a couple of weeks ago. Since this is a copy and paste process, I couldn't give proper credit to those people who should be credited. I still included the names in the headers. I think this would be Scott, Flamey, and Jeff. But if I've forgotten or missed anyone, please let me know, and I would be happy to rectify the issue. This week, I will try to solve this mysterious issue that I indicated last week with the documentation. And once it's done, I would like to start work in earnest on the n-dimensional array stuff in Microlab. So that's probably going to be a longer term goal, but I'm planning on starting on the work this week. Thanks.
That all sounds very cool. And by the way, the status of this pull request with the documentation changes in it and the incompatible change of the extras module is that it had been stuck in GitHub CI. And just before the meeting, I tried to bring that forward and get it unstuck by merging main in. So we should check soon on what the status of whether that builds is. Anyway, we are headed back up to the top for Dan, and then I will have some notes, and then we will go to Foamy Guy.
Okay. Hi. So
Hi.
I'm continuing my work on HCI-based BLE.io. This is just a very long project with several thousand lines of code. And I'm converting over another part of the Arduino BLE library, which is the attribute protocol implementation. And so I've got that compiled. I had to convert from C++ to C and make some other changes because I'm using a different set of include files than they are using, and that's more comprehensive. And so now I'm actually working on trying to respond to discovery requests, BLE discovery requests, and then read and write characteristics. So at some point, most of this will be working and we'll be able to do something like Bluefruit, but it's still a while yet, probably at least a week or two. Okay, the next thing we're working on, there's a new product that's coming out. It's in the top secret videos if you see it. And I did a board definition for a little more yesterday. It's pretty straightforward. There were a lot of reviews and issues to follow up on over the past weekend. I did a lot of that over the weekend to try to take a break from BLE. And finally, there are various versions of Neopixels, and there's one called the WS2813, which has an extra wire for it so that if a Neopixel in a strip goes bad, it gets jumped over. So if you had a lot of these in, say, an installation somewhere, then you wouldn't have to fix the whole strip or manually put jumpers in. but its timings are a little bit different, and somebody complained that it wasn't working with our Neopixel library in CircuitPython, or the base Neopixel implementation in CircuitPython. So I didn't try to fix this yet, but I took some data with the Salier about what the waveforms are actually looking like and how they work, how they look different in Arduino versus CircuitPython, because it does seem to work in Arduino, but not in CircuitPython. So eventually I'll try to fix this and touch up the timing slightly, but that's a low priority project. All right.
All right. Well, FoamyGuy is up soon, but now I have notes from David Cloud, who is lurking. He says, upgrading many of my boards to 6.0.0 Alpha 2 and the latest library. Still some work on air quality sensor, resolving a disagreement between Pylint and Black. And convinced the maker of Commander to add gamepad to his board, pull request accepted by Dan H. And now I want Count.io. We've got a number of lurkers. Hierophect is on deck, and now it's time for FoamyGuy.
All right. So last week I cleaned up and documented and published a productivity timer that I made with Circuit Playground. I made it a while back, but I just got around to actually posting it. I tested out a couple PRs for shapes and display text. I actually implemented an update to the progress bar library to use Vector.io, but then it was pointed out correctly that is not supported on version 5 devices, 5.x. So I ended up closing that off. I think it probably makes sense to keep those separate for now. So coming up next week, I will work on separating that out into its own library if people do want to use the Vector progress bar. I got a couple of orders in last week. One of them came with a KittenBot.io bit, and so I spent some time playing with that with the clue, connecting I2C devices and 5-volt Neopixels, and some other stuff that is ordinarily not quite so easy to do with the clue. So I think that thing's really cool. Definitely looking forward to playing around with that some more. I whipped up a quick countdown for the CircuitPython day for the PyPortal last week. I 3D printed a neon Neopixel strip holder. Jeff, I think you may have made one of these a while back that was a spiral, or whoever made that. That was my inspiration for this, and it turned out actually pretty cool. So I got some videos of that in the show and tell room if anyone's interested. And then lastly, for last week, I set up the circuit in order to test a PR for adding a new, or actually in this case, an older IO expander IC. So the library was supporting a new version of this chip. The older one has lots of the same functionality, but is a little bit more difficult to set up and use. But a user came by, added support for it, so I got that circuit set up to test it. For next week, for the next few weeks, actually, I'll be teaching JavaScript classes at night, so I won't be around as much in the evenings in the help with chat room. I do have a couple things that I want to take care of next week, though, in the CircuitPython world, which is going to be working with KMatch 98 some more on the documentation for display text. And then I would also like to spend some more time playing with Display.io shape, which I should mention also a belated hug report to Scott for getting me up to speed on how to use the Display.io shape. So I want to play with that some more for this next week. But that's all I got for now. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Hierophect, we're going to go to you next. And if I missed anybody, please just drop me a note in the text chat and I will get back to you.
Alrighty. So this past week, I worked on wrapping up my PWM out PR on the ESP32S2. It just involved fixing up some little nitpicks and bugs and stuff with duty cycles. And I also wrapped up the timer PR for STM32. So now that allows Pulse IO across all of the F4 devices. So even on kind of low end cheap boards like the F401 and the F411 now are able to run remote control pulse in, pulse out type stuff. And it'll also make it a lot easier for us to do things like have rotary IO and RGB matrix. You could theoretically do a RGB matrix and a pulse in, pulse out controller if you wanted to do such a thing. which you were not able to do before. I reviewed and tested Jeff's SDIO PR. So just going over kind of the code style, we had some good discussions about that. And I started reading into the documentation on the ESP32 S2 RMT, the remote control peripheral, which is actually a dedicated remote control pulse modulation out and in peripheral, which is handy. We don't have to do any crazy timer tricks. I'm just going to actually just implement the peripheral. So that's neat. So that's what I'll be working on this week. This week I will also be checking out, I'm going to see how much work I end up doing on the STM32F1, where I'm hoping to just mostly guide development of that. But I sent Scott a ping about whether it would be appropriate for me to take on the Flash module for that. I'll be investigating some other bugs that have popped up, including SPI, some kind of SPI issue on the STM32, and probably just doing kind of a general bugs roundup for when I'm done with Pulse.io on the ESP32S2, because I think there's been a little bit of a buildup in my backlog of bugs, so I'll be checking that out. And that's it for me.
All right. Well, with that, we are done with status updates, and we are going to move on to our last section, which is in the weeds. And just a reminder, if you have something else that, for instance, time boxes you at an hour, come back later and listen to the discussion after the fact. You don't have to stick around. But anyway, in the weeds is the time where we do a more in-depth discussion of whatever items are important to the community. And we just take them one by one, and I will hand it off to the person who has suggested the topic. They will tell you what's up, and we will do them until we are done. So with that, I will pass things on to Jerry.
Yeah, and I'll probably just pass it off back to Kattni because it looks like it's been discussed. But what I wanted to bring up was this whole issue on Discord of the moderation challenges that have been occurring, and just learn a little more about what this server discovery thing is and why we want it or don't, and do we really, and what's going on here. So I don't know who wants to take that.
So in general, server discovery is just another way for people to find our server. And we don't necessarily have metrics that I'm aware of on how many legitimate folks are finding the server this way. But based on the number of bans versus the number of users increase over time, there's plenty of new people who are finding it this way. So there is a benefit to server discovery. However, with it has come a lot of spam, and not just annoying spam, but vulgar spam. So we, as moderators, have been putting a lot of effort into dealing with this to try and keep this server a positive and welcoming place. That said, we talked about it with Phil, and Phil does see the benefit to server discovery. However, and also understands that the final destination for this whole plan may be removal from server discovery. So that is on the table. However, this is probably a bigger issue, like a Discord level issue, and Discord should be addressing it. And so the first part of the plan is actually for us to outline our situation and email that to Phil, and then Phil's actually going to pass that on to his contact at Discord. Adafruit is part of a server for sort of discussing Discord, but it's not very well used at the moment, apparently. So he is going to pass that on and also find out if there's a better place for discussion of this sort of thing. So what we want to do is try and put it in Discord's hands in the interim, and try to get them to address what we feel is an issue that is probably plaguing other servers as well, other communities. And if they can address it on a larger scale, that would be the ideal situation. If that goes nowhere, then we are definitely going to consider removal from server discovery. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So the point is we hear what our moderators are saying. We hear that it's stressful, that you're burning out, and that's a very serious thing. We take it very seriously, and which is why we keep saying, like, if you are getting burned out, please take a break. Let us know. If you are if you feel like you're covering a particular time, we'll figure something out to cover for you. So if you happen to be the only one around at 4 a.m. every day, let us know and we'll figure something out. But we want to try and put it in Discord's hands and see whether they are willing to enact some kind of thing before it even hits our server. And yeah, we enabled, that's what Dan's saying, we enabled a 10-minute waiting period for posting before joining, but it turns out that any account that has a verified phone number can actually get around that. It definitely helped, the 10-minute thing, but it's not foolproof. And obviously, if it's an actual person and not just a bot, they can very easily figure out that they just need to wait 10 minutes and you run into the same problems. So we're trying to figure out other things that we can implement to try and do something about it in the meantime. But it's definitely on our radar. That email is going to get sent to Phil with the outline of where we're at. And he's going to contact Discord. But we are definitely taking this very seriously. So
good, because it certainly evolves in the last recently too. That and I think we've gotten better at handling it and minimizing the amount of stress and work on the moderators, because we're simplifying the process, which may result in a little less documentation of the bans. But I think it's just there's just so much that if we can just do what we've been doing lately, that works. I've been surprised at some of the things that have gotten through. So luckily, most of it doesn't get through. Those sometimes are pretty disturbing.
There was a word, the N word got through yesterday, and I looked it up, and it was because they used a weird Unicode I in it, and I've now added it to the list so that at least that trick won't work. But
okay.
But people find
the one I had yesterday that really bothered me. I guess I realized now probably never got seen by the public. It was just it was only something we had to look at. So maybe that's not so bad.
And that's also why, if you're I'm getting burned out, obviously, with my reaction earlier, it is important to take breaks from it.
Sure.
And we also need to be aggressive in both banning people and locking stuff down so that people just don't have access. Locking this channel down so only CircuitPythonistas can speak has already made our lives better.
Right. And that's what I mean by the fact that we learn and adapt.
Yep.
But that's also a lesson in how quickly things shift. I mean, we had no problem in this meeting. We maybe had a person accidentally coming in, but then we had two people in quick succession who targeted this voice meeting.
Yep. And there's two people in here right now I suspect would have done the same thing.
But we adapted. It's just it's the stress. It's the stress that's occurring before we manage to adapt, because it does shift so quickly. And don't minimize that. Don't minimize your feelings just because you think that it's just because the rest of the server isn't seeing it. Don't minimize the fact that it's affecting you. Yep. We need to know that and hear that, and we want to do something about it.
I remember how agonizing it was the first time I banned someone, and I don't want to. Now it's sort of like, oh, here's another one. Click.
Well, those are the easy ones.
I don't like that feeling. It shouldn't be that easy.
No, I think it's fine. Like for the spam that we're getting, like it's obvious, right? Like
right. No, it's they've not been hard decisions.
There have been experiences where it's a very tough call as to what do we do with this person who has been a thorn in our side, but also a community member, both. And most of these bans are not that. They are people who have come to be bad actors, and we just need to show them the door.
Yeah, the other thing we can do is like the Python Discord server is actually larger than us, and the Home Assistant one as well. So I'm sure that I know that Python has this verification process where I think you have to like do a particular reaction to some message that the bot is basically monitoring, and then grants you access to everything. So that's one way that we can kind of like do some more like human proofing.
Yeah, Dan had suggested a CAPTCHA as well, which I think is kind of exactly what that is.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. So we have more steps we can do in the meantime, and we do intend to look into them and do them. But we really want to get this to a point where it's not like it is now. And whatever that takes. So the first thing we need to do is get a hold of Discord and say, you are creating a situation where this is really rough for us. Like, what are you going to do about it?
Server discovery is important to you, but we will not be in it if this continues.
Yeah, and that is exactly what will happen if there's no response on their part.
It's one thing if it's bugging the moderators, but when it starts, and I think it is beginning to impact the users, quality of experience, and that's really I think that's the line that we need to watch carefully.
I mean, that's equally important. It's it's important that we're creating a welcoming and inclusive and positive community, and some of the spam is definitely negating that. And the stuff is getting through. Like, that's the thing. If it just gets deleted immediately, somebody might have seen it, but they probably didn't. But a lot of it's not getting deleted immediately because of weird stuff, like the Unicode character or whatever. And that does affect our community, but how it's affecting the moderators is just as important. You guys are a part of our community as well, and making sure that we're in a position where we're not spending all our time moderating Discord is important for everybody.
I mean, as hard as it is when we have somebody on the line, I'd much rather like save our moderation stamina for those folks than exhaust it dealing with just garbage.
Right.
So we'll look into in the next few days other things we can enable and other things we can include in the process. I know for a long time we avoided this stuff because we wanted to make access easy. I think people are going to be able to figure out how to follow through with, with any kind of CAPTCHA or whatever. It's fine. I mean, the 10-minute thing we've enabled, and we originally didn't want to do that because we thought, people join and they want to immediately ask a question and ask an engineer or something. Well, it is what it is. We've done what we need to do, and we will continue to do so, even though it will make an extra step for someone who's joining the community. It means that the bots are less likely to join, and that makes it a much better community.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments here. One is, how about banning Unicode? And I think Stargirl had a comment in the mods channel about doing like Unicode normalization, which would be one way for us to like. I mean, it's a lot of work to write a bot and run a bot, so. But like, that's something that maybe we can engage with Dino about, of doing normalization so that something that falls back to rendering as an I would get caught by a banned word list that includes an I, for example. So I don't think banning Unicode's the right way to go, because like we want international folks, but we should at least make it make the banned word list more aware of that.
Yeah,
And
and some other people have had suggestions about can you do this or that, and I think what would be helpful is maybe I know of a Discord bot that does this because there are some things you can do and some things you can't do, and kind of your intuitions about what should be possible don't always seem to line up with what tools we have available right now.
right.
Yep.
And the other side of this is that we would love to consider more people for moderation. There's a lot of permissions and things that you are granted as a moderator, and so bear in mind that we will discuss it amongst the moderators and make a decision, and that it's not a reflection on you if we opt not to include you. It's just, we need to make sure that the group that we're creating is fits with what we're looking for, and we'll be clear about what those things are. But I just let us know. You can ping me directly in DM, or you can just message community moderators. And we would love to consider adding some more people. That would definitely help a little bit with the burnout. But we also don't want new people to get burned out, so we still need to look into all these other options as well. And higher effect, that's true. And that's part of the problem, is that the people that aren't bots are smart enough to get around whatever captchas and all this other stuff that we put in. So there's still going to be people that will get through because they are people.
We're never going to have no moderation load.
But ideally, we can get closer to where we were before server discovery.
Totally.
And
Alvaro did ask whether we could pause discovery, and we can, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's something we'd rather not do, because we do want the folks that are discovering Adafruit for the first time.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen some new people show up and ask, what is CircuitPython? And typically somebody asks that question and it's immediately followed by some kind of garbage. And that time it was not. So somebody new showed up and wanted to learn, and so we want to make sure that those people are, able to find us and able to get through. But we also need to make sure that the community that they're joining is the positive, welcoming community that we look for. So, okay, I think we're good on this. I want to let, yeah, we're on it. I want to let everybody else get their in the weeds topics in. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. You can ping one of us directly, or let any of the moderators know, and we can discuss things and get back to you and that kind of thing. We're always available. Or somebody is.
Somebody is. Well, that's heavy stuff, so thank you, everybody.
Yep.
And now I will hand it over to Zoltan.
Thanks, Jeff. So I just wanted to ask what the status of this microlab documentation is. I mean, I basically factored out everything in a way that that matches or conforms to your vision on how the documentation should be generated. The problem is that at least it seems to me that there's a glitch on the Adafruit side, and I just don't know what I should do, if anything, or in general how we should move forward. Because I think I'm really convinced now that this is the right step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. That we have one source of documentation, and then that would make your life, I hope, infinitely easier, because then you wouldn't really have to do anything. You just pull the code from my side, and then there you go. Mm-hmm. But if that doesn't work, then we have to come up with some other solution. And I just wanted to ask what your suggestions are, so I think the main problem now is that we split up Microlab into submodules, and now we have too many levels in the hierarchy. So Microlab is a module of CircuitPython, but Microlab itself has submodules, and these submodules are not processed properly. And that's why the documentation is a bit broken. So and obviously I definitely agree with Scott's sentiments that the CircuitPython experience is very important, but I think the documentation is part of that, and I do believe that you agree. So I would love to fix this. The question is if anything is missing on my part, or if there's anything I could do to rectify this.
I mean, it looks like it's just a bug with Auto API is kind of my perception of it, but
I don't know if it's a bug or if the make file is well, it's not able to handle this situation. So I actually tried to look into other Python libraries that would have similar issues, most notably NumPy. But unfortunately, they generate their documentation in a different way, so that was no use. So if you want to get rid of the Auto API segment, then I could do that. We just have to write up. Basically, I think the problem is that when you generate the introduction or the highest level in the hierarchy for Microlab, then that's one too many level. So what we could do is that we generate the documentation automatically for the lower levels, and we just have to write this 1 or 2 page summary for the top level. I'm okay with that. I just want to know what your ideas or suggestions are, and I'm totally fine with that, whatever it is. So just fire away.
So I think that one of the things we discovered was already in the documentation of Microlab, there is this problem. If you look in the 6.0 latest documentation, we found that these entries that we expected to be in the table of contents already aren't there. So the fact that that there are some of them that appear or some of them that disappear with this pull request means we're just slightly differently experiencing the same underlying problem we already are. And so I think that is not going to mean that we shouldn't merge this change from you to do the documentation in the way we do all of the other documentation. I've looked into the generated files. There are a bunch of steps. The C file is turned into a PYI file, of which the content looks right. The PYI file is turned into an RST file, of which the content looks right. And then Sphinx generates these tables of contents according to directives. And that table of contents is wrong. So one option is to change the directive for that table of contents and tell it not to go down that additional level. Then it wouldn't show any of the things at that one level down. The other is to treat it as a Sphinx bug and kind of pursue it with them. But either way, I think what you are doing is great, and we want to take it, and we're not experiencing any new bugs as a result of it. We're just experiencing bugs that were afflicting CircuitPython already that we need in some time frame to address. So I wouldn't ask you to change what you've done, and I am really happy about the work you've done. Okay, fine. The second question, it's very general, and actually it's probably not my place to or I'm not in the position to ask this question. So when I try to debug this issue, well, I had to generate the documentation for each modification that I implemented, and it seems to me that the documentation is not generated in an incremental way. So everything is generated in one step, and even if you
change a single file, then everything will be regenerated again, and that's actually a costly process. So I think on my computer I needed something like 1.5 to 2 minutes for the whole process to complete. Perhaps a bit shorter, but not significantly.
So Sphinx can do partial builds.
Okay.
Just look at the flags that you're giving Sphinx build. I think it's like E. That erases.
I took your make file, so
yeah.
That's probably the problem.
The build system is designed to make sure that it regenerates everything, because that is going to be the most consistent. My experience with some of these systems has been there are faster modes and they are going to be less right, and so kind of for your final build or your standard build, you're going to want to regenerate everything.
Right.
But yeah, definitely check on this flag and see if it speeds things up.
So the -A flag might be there, and that says all. And if that's we might remove that. But the disadvantage I have found is that when I didn't give that locally when doing some much smaller documentation project, that it said that the build was okay, and then when I pushed the release and it would rebuild from scratch, it turned out there was a bug. So when you're satisfied, then run a -A to make sure that everything is really okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds good. Well, I think I'm satisfied with the responses, so I would just like to hand it over to Dan then. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so Jeff, you asked me about board.i2c versus busio.i2c, and I wrote something up, but I didn't know whether this is what you wanted to know.
That is what I wanted to know. I mean, I assume it's the same about SPI.
Yes, but we didn't bother to make this change for SPI.
Okay. The
people generally don't have this issue with SPI, it seems, just because there are a lot more I2C examples. Mm-hmm. And so the support that I've had to give is almost exclusively about, I used board.i2c and then I used busio.i2c, and then it says pin in use, and I don't understand this. And this comes up every couple of weeks, basically. So one of the users pointed out that what was in one of the older guides was out of date. And so Kattni and I worked on figuring out how to fix that, and we did fix it partly. One thing that I thought of when I was writing this up was, well, maybe we should make busio.i2c actually use the singleton if it was already created. And I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but it would sort of solve the problem. It would still make their code a little bit like not perfect, but it could notice that, oh yes, the pins you're using are the same as this, and just use the singleton instead of just saying like, no, sorry, you're trying to create a new bus on old pins. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure I would recommend that, but.
See, Dan?
Yeah.
On one, and I can't remember, I think it was the PyPortal, but I kept finding that when I went to do the examples, that if I started up the board and then tried to use the busio version, if the display was up and running, I would get the in-use error.
Yeah.
And then I had to change all the examples to use in other words, I didn't touch anything on the, I hadn't done anything with I2C, but it would give me that error unless I used the board.i2c.
Yes, that's the problem. Yes. Right. And there's a case where, for instance, the CPX library creates, or not the CPX library, but some other libraries, they created a board.i2c object, and then it broke some existing code. Yeah, exactly. So
right. So sometimes where you have to use that board.i2c.
Right. So either we have to explain that, or we could actually just busio.i2c does the right thing.
Is there any reason? I guess the only reason for using busio would be if you want to change the pins, right?
That's right. Right. So I don't know if anybody has any opinions. Scott, do you have an opinion about making busio.I2C use the singleton if it can?
I'm not a huge fan of that idea, but I wouldn't
Okay.
block it.
All right.
The reason I'm not a huge fan is because I can picture somebody making code that looks wrong and it would work, right? Like,
Yeah, that's what I
you
thought.
have a
Yeah.
code.py that has busio.I2C twice. Like, I'm not sure that's great to not error out with, because this is the only case where that would work.
Right.
Like, if I did that twice with unique pins that were not designated as I2C, then it would error, and I think that's unexpected.
Yeah, that's right. That's inconsistent. Well, actually, we could do something very simple. We could just make we could make, if busio.I2C uses the pins that would be for this, it could print a better error message.
Yeah.
That's probably the easiest fix. Maybe that's a good idea. Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'll put that down. All right.
That's a great way to solve it.
Yeah, I'll do. All right, I think we figured it out. Okay. All right, and then another minor thing, which just it's a related issue, is that these things all don't they don't allow you to provide parameters like the frequency or the baud rate, all these default objects. And in the case of, I think, are there any that you can't change the I think SPI you can't change the rate afterwards? Something
you can. I2C you cannot.
It's I2C where you can't.
Yeah.
You cannot. Well, maybe you can.
I remember being in a discussion about this, and someone said, well, you can't change it on I2C because all the devices on the bus have to agree on the speed.
Correct.
Right. You can't change it willy-nilly, right?
Mm-hmm.
But someone might want to use the board.I2C with a set of devices that could use it, that need a different frequency, and then they have to kind of know what to do. So it's kind of an edge case. So it's probably not worth fixing right now.
Well, remind me.
Yeah.
Does the tier? I think because the default board speed for I2C is 400, right?
That's right.
You have a lot of I mean, if I recall correctly, like the DRV2605, which is like a little haptic motor driver, has a max speed of 100, and that's a pretty common board.
So maybe So maybe we should think about adding a speed argument to the singleton creator. In fact, maybe there might even be an issue for that.
I think you're asking for trouble then, because the whole thing with the singleton is you can have multiple calls to it in different places and not know about it. And so if you have a library that calls the singleton creator and you're importing it before you do your call that gives a speed, like, what do you do then? Like, I don't think it's meant for that. Like, you really have to use busio if you want to be deliberate about what you're doing.
All right, so I think just a better message in the exception that's raised. I will propose that, and I'll work on that.
Yeah, it also causes problems with Blinka because, like, with the Raspberry Pi, you have to actually set it in configuration. You can't just pass a speed in so easily.
Okay, all right.
You have to have the kernel set it.
Yeah.
What happens? Excuse me.
Go ahead. Sorry,
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
What happens if you want to have two different buses, two different I2C buses with two different speeds? I was wondering about that.
On Raspberry Pi or what?
No, on the Raspberry Pi.
Well, on the Raspberry Pi, you have to do it when you do the device overlay stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa.
I think you're correct.
That's correct. It's the device overlay, and that's where you would change the speed.
Right.
And I don't know if you can do two different speeds or not.
Yeah, I was just curious because I have a group of things that are at one speed, and I have a group of things that are capable of running at higher speeds. And I was figuring maybe you could divide the buses.
We just pick different pins. So yeah.
Basically pick different pins.
Right, you can do that on regular microcontrollers, but we're not. It depends on the single board computers. It depends.
I can't remember off the top of my head if you can set it on a per bus basis.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That was just the only curious question I had about it.
Dan?
Yeah.
Is there a problem then with, I think, again, maybe it was the PyPortal or maybe it was the CPI, where you can't use bus IO after the display is initialized?
That sounds like a bug to me.
It needs to be fixed.
No, like if you've got a SPI display, then you couldn't create busio.spy using those pins.
This is I2C, and it was something that again, maybe I need to go find the issue, demonstrate it. But if you just brought up the board in the sort of normal fashion, then tried to run some example to use I2C, it would object. It would say pin in use if you try to use the busio.
It sounds like a bug, except if you're importing the PyPortal library, then it might be doing something you just didn't know it was doing.
Right. Okay. So that may be the case.
So if it happens without the library, it's a bug.
But yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll if I can trap it, I'll report it. I'll let you on it.
But yeah, I think mostly it's the confusion from the libraries doing some sort of initialization for something you aren't even using that you didn't know it was doing.
Right. But is there a way around that? So if PyPortal library is initializing I2C, what do? How do you then?
The library should make the I2C available on the library object itself. You should be able to do PyPortal.I2C and get the bus back.
Or else its constructor should be able to take an alternate object, and if not, construct its idea of what the default one is.
Or it should be using board.something, where you could just call it.
Using board.I2C works, but okay.
That's my guess then. My guess is that it's using board.I2C internally.
Right.
For one of the sensors on the board.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then the expectation is that you just use board.I2C as well.
And then you're kind of stuck then anyway, because you can't really get too fancy because it's already been committed and set up. So, all right.
Yep, that's the downside of using an all-in-one library.
That gets interesting when you try to use an external. I now recognize why I get sometimes get a weird response when I try to use an external sensor on the Circuit Playground Express.
Yep.
That would at least account for why I can't make certain things work. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and I think like Dan's talking about, adding a specific error message for that case would be very helpful, right? If it's just saying hey, it looks like you just want board.I2C.
Yeah.
I think that'll make these cases a lot clearer than the vague pin in use response.
Yeah. That's what I think. I think that'll at least it'll get people one step further.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. So I'm done.
All right, thanks, Dan. That went longer than I expected, but we've still got higher effects.
Welcome to the weeds, Jeff. Welcome to the weeds.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything in particular. I just wanted to mention for all this, when we were talking all these board peripherals, that we were thinking about starting the SDIO, board.SDIO. But I don't think it actually is really all that relevant to this particular discussion. I thought that there might be some kind of concern about, the initialization of that compared to these other things, but it's not a big deal.
Oh, I think we can talk about it for a second, because of course Scott's here and I value his opinion. So basically we've got these at least two boards that have an SDIO bus. 3 boards if you count the SAM-E54. And should we go ahead and add to board the function which constructs these as a singleton? And my gut was, yeah, maybe someday, but it's not super critical right now.
If you want to, that's fine. It is certainly convenient. The one thing I would make sure is that if you are using a SPI bus under the hood, make sure that it's available as well, in case it's shared. And you can actually you could do board.spy and board.sd spy or something. If you did actually have like two kind of de facto spy buses on a board, you could do that as well.
All right. Well, I did file an issue about this because it was kind of a way to say, I think that this is probably a good addition for the future, but I wanted to get the pull request in. So,
yeah,
right.
I mean, I
had originally brought it up because in Jeff's implementation of this, we had a tuple of pins defined in pins.c, which was not really my first impression of where. Like I was used to all these other kind of default devices per board having, a macro defined in mpconfig board.h, right?
Right.
Where we have kind of like, you can go to, kind of the point being, you can go to mpconfig board.h and you can see basically every reserved pin on your board other than maybe, USB. So I feel like that might be an advantage of, I mean, the feather on the Feather 405, the SD pins aren't really broken out on pins, but in the case that you did have something like that, you might want to know, you might want to have that information available in the same place everything else is.
Right. No, I think it's a good idea. And if you want to do it, that's great. I wouldn't say it's urgent. I would say keep an eye out for people that don't know how to create SDIOs, and then you'll see when it would be helpful.
Okay. That's good.
But yeah, I agree with you, Lucian, that it's just like, it's the way that we've taught people to deal with buses that are internal to the board. Seems like a good idea to me.
Just while we're on the topic of SD cards, is the issue about the STM32F405 and the external SD cards resolved?
No, it's not. I have to test it and get into it. It's probably some kind of HAL level driver issue, which, those things sometimes they're really easy to resolve. Sometimes they're not.
Okay, I didn't know. I just couldn't remember if it was caught up in.
Yeah, no, I put it on my to-do list, but I've been prioritizing the ESP32 stuff.
Hopefully, no one will ever need it since they have the other card. Other one now.
But no, it's on my radar. I just haven't gotten a chance to sit down and bring up my project.
Thank you.
See what's going on. So, okay.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of In the Weeds. So I am going to wrap this meeting up, taking my last time code. And Scott, you'll have to help me out because I lost my notes. But this has been the CircuitPython weekly meeting for July 27th, 2020. Thanks for joining us. If you, for some reason, skipped ahead to the end, I will remind you that there are time codes in our accompanying notes document. Use them to skip to the part that you're interested in. We would love to see you on Discord for our next meeting. Just hit us up. Let us know you would like to be a member of the CircuitPythonistas so that you can join us and say your piece, give your hug reports and status updates. Anyway, be well, and we will see you again in about a week. Bye, everybody.